Hey guys, Joe Sanders here on the Start Marketing Podcast. Thanks again for listening. Today we're going to talk about content, and it's probably the $1 million question that I get asked all the time is, what kind of content should I post? Or people come to me all the time and they want to talk about digital marketing. What they really mean is they want to talk about what kind of content can they post, and I've got this, I've got that. Now, in the previous episodes, as we laid out the 5 steps, right? We laid this out for everybody so that we know what's going on when we stop posting, we start marketing. The number one step, of course, step number 1 is find the right audience. Step number 2 is to create content, and that's what we're talking about today. The third step is going to be about branding, right? Promoting your business as a brand. 4th is using ample resources. And 5 is analyzing the results. Now, in the previous episode, we talked about finding your audience, and that's super important. So don't ever create content unless you know who your audience is. All right. So today we're going to talk about that. And to talk about it today, we have a very special guest, a very cool guy, a marketer, a filmmaker, an actor, a producer, director, everything you want. We have John Meier with us today on the podcast, a good old friend of mine. Say hi, John. How you doing?
What's up, Joe? How are you, man?
Good. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. I told everybody that we were going to have guests because I didn't want to sit here and feel like I feel like I'm talking to myself because I'm looking at myself and it's just me. So this is really nice.
To talk with someone else for sure.
Yeah. So I'm going to brag on you for a little bit here because I want people to know who you are. So I've known John. John, how long have we known each other?
Man, a while.
How long has it been? Like 15 years? Longer? 20 years?
I don't know, man.
I think it's been that long. John is an accomplished digital marketer. He is a wizard with Google AdWords, SEO, websites, landing pages. He's like the conversion king over here. Also happens to be an award-winning filmmaker. John's made films that have been on Redbox and Netflix. He's super talented. So John, why don't you just, I gave you a little introduction there, but why don't you just kind of tell people kind of like what you're doing, where you're at, in the world and kind of what, even though I forced you to be on here, but tell people a little about yourself and what gets you going.
Well, I'm not sure that our films have won any awards, but we've, definitely loved film and been doing that for a long time. And actually film is what got me into marketing. It kind of started. It started as simple as I needed to learn how to update our film website. So that was kind of how I started just getting in even to things outside of the film production space. And that from there I kind of learned WordPress and that stuff. And then again, I'm condensing a lot of information down. But then my business mentor and really good friend, Chris, asked me to come on board and help him with his marketing with his software company in California. And that was really when my real marketing education began. And that was awesome. Just a great experience, got to learn from some really other great marketers through just, classes and, I don't want to say seminars, but, that type of thing where we'd go and, small kind of group settings and learning from some really great marketers. And yeah, so that was kind of really where I got to jump in and really start learning about marketing. And it's kind of interesting for me because as a filmmaker, I think a lot of filmmakers fall into this camp. We just want to make our movie. We don't want to market it. It's kind of, you see that a lot. It's like, You just want to make your movie and you want to hand it off to someone else to do the marketing. And maybe 15 years ago, that was maybe fine. Maybe that still worked. I don't know that still works today. So that was what was really cool. On the film side, learning about marketing, marketing was always that thing. It was like that knowledge and information that somebody else had that I don't know anything about that. It's something, again, and it didn't even seem like you could learn stuff about that. And so it's pretty cool. Like once I started learning about it, kind of getting, seeing the mechanics of it and really seeing how it works. And I think what happens is the light bulb starts going off and you're like, oh, wait, I could do this. Like it's not nearly, it's super complicated. And that I think that has a lot to do with just there's so many platforms and there's so many different ways to market. So I could see how it's very complicated if you're looking at it for the first time. But also I think once you get through the clutter, marketing's pretty simple too. And I think once I'll say this too. I think one really cool thing these days is that small businesses have access to the exact same platforms as very large businesses. The ad spends might be different, but I think that's one really cool thing. And again, I don't know that was true probably even 10 years ago, where it was probably too expensive for a small business to get a billboard or something where everybody could run a Google ad, or anybody could do things on social media and stuff like that. So I think that's one really cool thing about marketing. Right. And yeah, so like I said, it was just really great, over the years. And then us working together too, just getting to work on so many different, companies, campaigns and things like that. It's just really cool. You just you keep learning and you keep growing. And I think, marketing's always changing. So you and I talk about this a lot. I think, you could really master one platform, but then that platform might not even be there in 10 years. So I think you just got to have the fundamentals. And I think those, you can go learn. All these platforms are just tools to market. So you can go learn the tools, I think, if you have the fundamentals and basics. So
great. Yeah. And that kind of brings up, that's great. And that kind of brings up kind of the first question I want to talk about with you today. So I have 3 questions that I figured out are the ones that I get asked the most. And they kind of hit on, I think, what a lot of people struggle with when they're trying to do content. So let's start with the first one. You kind of alluded to it, so I'll segue in a little bit. You talked about platforms and how, and I do say this is something that I do say quite a bit, that marketing hasn't changed, it never will. And that, understanding how marketing works is core to being successful at digital marketing, because if you know how to market things, you can market on anything. But having said that, how do you as a professional marketer decide what platforms that you should be using when you're working on a project? Because I know you're working on several projects, anything from the entertainment film world to professional services, or people hiring you to do whatever you're doing. How do you figure that out? Like, how do you know what platforms to use? How do you figure that out? What do you do?
So I think this kind of goes into like we just talked about, there's so many platforms out there. And I think as a marketer working for a company, I think you really got to think through what's actually going to make a difference for that company. I think each company is, different. I think you have your core platforms that you just want to have a presence on. You want to have a social media presence on some level. You want to have your Google My Business optimized. You really want to be showing up well in search. And that, to me, that means, that goes back to the website, having that foundation built well for, SEO. So I tend to look at, think about what platforms for that specific company are actually going to make the difference for that company. And I think that comes through conversations with the company owners or whoever's, coordinating with you on the marketing. And I think that's understanding the goals of that company, right? I mean, you got to understand if they're bringing you on as a marketer, sometimes you might be bringing on board to kind of manage everything. Maybe it's just one specific thing you're being brought on board to manage. And I think you just got to understand the goals of the company. I think, and then you got to understand what's the best platform to reach that goal.
Yeah, that's so true, because, everybody has different goals when it comes to digital marketing. Like, some people, will argue with me, or maybe even with you, and what we're talking to them is like, oh, all I want you to do is drive revenue. I just want to get more sales. Well, that's not always necessarily the goal, right? Sometimes you're marketing things that people can't buy. I mean, I remember working on a project. We were working on a building or a business that wasn't even open yet. And you couldn't spend money on it. So for 3 months, we're working on this restaurant project of a restaurant you could not eat at. You couldn't spend money on them if you wanted to. So the goal there was not to drive revenue. The goal there was to drive awareness, right? And I think that's kind of what you're alluding to too, is that, you have to understand what your goals are. That's so important, right? And what I find too is a lot of times when people come to me and they go, oh, but no young people are on this platform, or, oh, only old people are on this platform, or whatever. And then, I say, okay, but you can pull the statistics, the demographic statistics for any social media site. Very simply, just go to Google, type it in. They have them. There's all kinds of companies out there that are pulling all this kind of information. But here's what you got to remember. This is at least what I think, is that you could say that, well, only 15% of the users on this particular platform are in my demographic. Well, if the total amount of users on the platform is like 10 billion people, then like 10 to 15% is still a ton of people, right? So you have to keep, I think, all that in perspective, right? I think you have to have a perspective on what exactly your goals are, and then trying to find the right platform by which to use is really important. Now, for me, John, and I think when we do this together, I'm thinking the core ones, at least for right now, based on where we're at today. I think Facebook, I don't know if you could agree with me or not, I think Facebook is definitely one you need to be on. Instagram, Google My Business are the three that come to mind. What are your thoughts? I mean, would you agree with that? I mean, what do you think are like the core?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely. I think those three to have a presence on, and then probably like which one of those is most important probably depends a lot on the business, right?
Right.
So I agree. I would say those three are probably the three at a minimum you want to have a presence on for sure.
Yeah, we're doing, nowadays we're hearing a lot about TikTok, and we're doing a little bit on our side with TikTok. We did quite a bit with Snapchat over the past couple of years. Are you doing any of that? Are you guys involved with anything on that level? Or doing anything like that?
Mostly the three that you just said, in Google, and then, a lot on the Google ad side. So
yeah, right on. And I'll tell you this, it's so important. And we go back to these goals, because I remember, TikTok right now is like the big thing, I guess, unless it's being banned somewhere. But, Snapchat, I remember working on a project years ago. It was a boutique project. And we could not get these girls we were trying to sell prom dresses. We could not get these girls to do anything on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. We couldn't get them to do anything. As soon as we switched over to Snapchat, which I guess at the time was the hot thing, we had to figure out how to do that. We really started to see traction. So deciding on the platform that you have, it will get there. But I think what people have to remember is your platform's only being as good as the marketing that you do, right? Like the campaign that we ran for this boutique, and I don't have the time to go into all that today. The result of it is that we were in the right place, but the marketing equations were still the same. We still had to make sure we had the right audience and the right content and the right branding and the right resources and the right analytics. We still had to do that, even though we were using a platform. A lot of people, I think, say, oh, well, we've never been on this platform before, on Instagram before. We'll post something on Instagram and, oh, it didn't work. Well, just because you post on that platform, that doesn't mean anything's going to happen, sure. Right? It just means that you might be in the right place, but you still have to follow the marketing equation. Yeah. Right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah. And I think these days too, I think getting like an organic growth on the platforms is also very difficult now. I mean, I think, just posting on the platform, I don't think that necessarily means all of a sudden you're going to have, thousands of followers.
That's right. Because we say what? Stop posting, start marketing.
Start marketing.
On the platform.
Totally.
Right? Yeah, you're right. Organic's the way to go. And sometimes you have to pay to get the, sort of an oxymoron, but you have to pay to get the organic, because you have to grow your audience and show it to enough people and that kind of
thing. Well, and that's something you and I talk about a lot is, and then that goes into, if you're starting to pay for these things, what's the best place to actually pay for it? Right. Is it paying for social media ads, or is it paying for a Facebook ad that might be more expensive, but be way more targeted? So I think those are the things you really, other things you really got to think about too is, you got to think about it. I mean, I really think it comes down to what's actually good for that business that you're marketing. And I think in similar industries, the same thing is good for the similar businesses, but then across different industries, I mean, it could be, totally, different what each company needs with some of the foundational things always probably being the same. So.
Yeah. And you're right. And I think, one of the things that, we worked on so many different projects, and there's been times when we've taken people from a platform to another platform to another platform because we're not getting the results that we want. We're analyzing, we're not getting what we need, and we move and move and move, and we're shifting to get where we mean. And I think that comes down to some of these two major buckets of digital marketing. One is I'm searching for them or they're searching for me, right? So if I'm trying to market if I'm an ice cream company, I make Chicago Cubs ice cream bars. Now I know John's actually wearing a Cubs hat right now. He lives in Arizona, but he grew up here. So I think he's still a fan. But anyway, if that's maybe why I thought of that. But if let's say I'm a company that's making Chicago Cubs ice cream bars. What is the odds that somebody's actually going to search for Chicago Cubs ice cream bar? Not very likely. That's not something people are searching for. But if I'm searching for people that like the Chicago Cubs, that like ice cream, that live in the Chicagoland area, well, that I can create a market for my product based on what these people like, depending on which platform I'm on. Now, in the other sense is that's me searching for them. Them searching for me, right? That's when somebody's searching for typing in car insurance, or they're typing in, whatever they're typing in, home remodeling or whatever it is. And then we're showing them, but they're looking for us. And those are two major things. And I think a lot of times picking the platform you want to be on really just dependent on that. If you're searching for people based on their interests, based on who they're following, all these kinds of things, then you're probably going to be playing in the Facebook, Twitter, Instagram world. If your product is something that people are going to be searching for and searching for you, and then when they see you, then they come, you're probably playing in Google world, or some of their sites, you know what I mean? And I think that is something I think some people miss. We've worked on a few different projects with people where I think they've been on the wrong platform because they didn't understand how to find people or how people could find them.
And the cool thing is, right, you could find that information out up front. I mean, you could see an audience reach on Facebook once you put in the metrics. Same thing on Google, though, in the keyword planner. You could get a good idea.
Definitely.
How many people are actually searching, for those search terms.
And you can also find the CPMs, right? Like how much it's going to cost to market to them at a time. If you don't know what a CPM is, stay tuned because we're going to be talking about that when we talk about using an ample resources. Let's jump to another question though, as this kind of brings us up. So we've decided now what platforms to use. We've seen the landscape. We've made a decision. Okay, I know what platforms I'm going to be on, at least the ones I'm going to try. How often should I post on these things? How do people people ask me this a lot. They go, how many times should I post on my site? And I have an answer, but I'm curious to hear what John has to say.
I think it depends. I mean, I think how good is your content?
Right.
I think that's the question. I think, one thing I see with all this too is it's not just a matter of posting. It's what's the quality of the content you're posting. I mean, if you have great stuff that your audience is going to really like, and you have that every day, post every day. If you don't, maybe you're only posting a couple times a week, but you're posting pretty, solid, good content. And I should say, I'm specifically talking in terms of organic reach as well. Yeah. I kind of different when you're spending money and, blast post out to a bunch of people and you're paying for it. So.
Right. And I think it's important for people to understand if you're new at this, if you're new at digital marketing, there's two ways to post content. One is like what John's referring to as the organic content. And maybe we have to define what that is. If you don't know what that is, organic is where I post something, I don't pay for it. So that's that post I put on my Facebook page or my Instagram page, but I don't put any money behind it or quote unquote boost the post or whatever it has to be. But there's another way to do this too, where you can create ads, as we call them, things you have to actually pay for when you're posting. And a lot of times what you can do with these ads is the ads can run in the background of your page and constantly be serving to the people that you're looking for. Okay. They don't even necessarily have to show up on your page. So one of the best things I couldn't agree with you more about, it depends on your content. It depends on your business too, but one of the best ways to balance a social media page or even a Google page is to have that, well, I've got the organic stuff that's really branding me and bringing people in, And then I've got that call to action post that's that in the background, what we call dark ads. They don't show up on my page, but they're constantly being serving. It's interesting. Sometimes you'll look at a social media page and they'll have like 10,000 followers and they have like one post a week and they have very much engagement on there. And you're like, how did they do that? Well, the way they did that is because they have ads running in the background constantly. Right. And now, by the way, there is a way that you can actually see what ads people are running on most platforms these days. It's kind of a new thing. So, if that's something you're interested in, Google that, you can find that out. But I think that that's a really important way to balance, is to have the organic stuff, which is really branding you and really showing people what you're about, maybe the day-to-day stuff. But then those ads that are constantly running in the background, reaching the audience you want to reach with the content you want to reach them with constantly to help grow the page and get a lot of impressions, right? Isn't that kind of how, would you agree?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And I also think that the type of business you have, we represent a lot of different kinds of clients. And I always kind of use this example of I've got music venues, at least I used to, that do live music 5 nights a week. Right. And we had lots of them. We still do, but we had plenty more pre-COVID. But let's say I have a music venue that has live music 5 nights a week. And I have a music school, because I do, that has classes 5 days a week. Right. Okay. Which one of those is appropriate for me to be posting like 3 to 4 times a day? Well, hopefully you would all agree with me that the music venue definitely is the one that would be more appropriate to be posting 3 to 4 times a day. Why? Because if I'm doing 5 different live events every week, that's a lot of different call to actions, concerts, artists, landing pages, times, tickets, all this stuff. A music school is going to run semester at a time, 5 classes. They're going to be fairly the same semester to semester. To post 3, 4, 5 times a day would probably be inappropriate in that case. Now, John's right in the sense that, let's say this music school just got some rocking content. They've got people there every day, and it's awesome. And they're really engaged. That's great. But I think you need to be careful a little bit. My caution to people would be, if people are not paying attention to your posts because maybe you don't have the right content strategy, you don't have this marketing equation figured out yet, don't post like a ton every day, because you're probably going to get people to unfollow you because you're just posting way too much. I see this a lot. Have you had any experience with that, John, about like seeing pages or doing stuff where it's too much and it just doesn't work?
Not really, not on my end. So no, I haven't, but it makes total sense what you're saying. If you're just posting tons of stuff, that's not, again, I go to what's the quality of the content? I mean, if the flip side of that, right, might be if you post awesome content, you're probably not going to lose those followers. You might actually
have it, right?
But yeah, I think what you just said makes so much sense, right? Like if you're posting a lot, it's not good, it's not quality. Yeah, that makes total sense that you would, lose followers. It'd almost have the opposite effect for your brand.
Right. Well, and that leads us to like the third point. So we talked about like the platform usage. We talked about how often we should post. What about the content like itself? Like and I'll just ask you point blank, how do you decide what kind of content to post, right? It's the $1 million question. But sure. Everybody does a little different, but in your head, how do you decide for each client, like what kind of content to post? How do you do it? What do you do?
Again, I think you got to think about the business. You got to think about the goals of the business, and you got to think about the audience. I think, and that's probably, if not, the audience is probably the most important part. And if you think about, and again, I think the audience ties in with the goals of the business. And I think then you think about that audience, and then you think about the different types of content that would be good for that audience. And that could be such a wide range of things in there, but I think the content creation side of this is and I think you'd agree, right? That's kind of the hard part of social media. It's, again, how do you continually come up with great content,
right,
to post?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And I think, the content the content that we post says so much more about our brand than anything else, right? But I think you're totally right. And this is why we're doing content creation here is step 2, not step 1. Step 1 is to find the audience, right? You have to know who you're marketing to before you create content. That's why a lot of people fail at digital marketing, because they start with content. And look, do some people get it right all the time? Yes, they do. Some people get lucky. They go, well, I've got this great stuff. I'll put it out there and people will like it. It happens. But long-term, winning in marketing and branding requires sort of this method and this creating marketing equations. I'll use an example. So back to that example I was talking about when we were marketing this boutique. We were trying to figure out how to sell prom dresses. All right. Well, what we figured out was we figured out what kind of content these girls would pay attention to. 15 to 18-year-old girls were paying attention to on Snapchat. We figured out what they were interested in and where they were. But that same kind of content, all right, would not work for our secondary audience, which was the mothers of the girls who were paying for this, right? They were, 40 to 55-year-old women. They weren't on Snapchat. Even if they were on Snapchat, the content we created to show them would have been totally different. So we're marketing to them on Facebook, we're marketing to them on Instagram, and we're getting traction, but we're having a completely different types of content, right? The girls may be getting something flashy and fun and ambiguous, with the moms are getting something a little more straightforward. We're also marketing to the dads as well, not spending as much resources, but yeah, because dads are paying for this too. That's you're not marketing to them with the same content either. And then there's even a fourth audience, not to overcomplicate this too much, but the girls that are 13 to 15 that are going to prom, not now, but in the future, that might want to buy these dresses from a Sue, right? A whole different kinds of content. And I think if you go into this without knowing who your audience is, and like you said, John, what the goals are, then you're probably gonna have a pretty hard time connecting with your audience, because you may be getting to some people and turning other people off, right?
Right.
Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense.
And the other thing too that I have found too is I think I get this a lot from people. I talk to people and they go, well, we should really post a video. We really need video. And look, you of all people as a professional filmmaker should how the power of video. And that could be a whole other podcast. We could have I'll shut up. You can just talk about, making videos and how awesome, all that kind of stuff and how well that connects with people on social media. But anyway, people come here and say, hey, we really need a video. Well, I would argue that no, maybe you don't. Because like you said, John, if you don't have video, right? If the availability of the content that you don't have that, then what are you going to then it's not. And there was actually an instance where we were promoting, this is a true story. We were promoting a stand-up comic for a gig. And we found this great clip of the comic, and it did way better. The video did way better than the static pictures that we were doing. I mean, it did really well. And so somebody in our team got a little more aggressive and found another clip that they posted. And that started to do well until we found out that the second clip of the video was people were finding it offensive and they were like boycotting it. So while you could argue with me that video is the best way to go and video is always going to be better than static content, well, it is if you have the right video.
Sure.
Right? It's about, just like you said, it's about the availability of content. So what do you, so like so I'll pose this to you too, as we kind of close up here. So if you're marketing something and you don't really have a lot of content, like what do you do? Like if they only give you a handful of things, what's your process for making sure that stuff is consistent and intentionally done?
Yeah. And I think that's part of the challenge, right? And I think one thing, and, I think you do well, is you include, right? Am I right? You include some type of content creation in terms of like you send a videographer out to the business.
Right.
Like,
if we can, yeah.
Yeah. So, I think, thinking about that stuff on the front end. But I think the question you were saying is like, what if you just don't have any of that stuff?
Right.
I think then you got to get creative. You got to, I think maybe that's where like maybe blogging could come into play.
Mm-hmm.
You can maybe have, weekly to next, maybe not weekly necessarily, that might work for some businesses, but you could have like 2 times a month, once a month, have a blog post created. I think that blog post will then, you can break that off into, some social media post.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I think you just kind of, you're looking at like their website, you're looking at different things, to just start thinking about what are some different, posts you could put together for that company. But I do think that is the challenge, is when you don't have an ongoing content creation plan in place, how do you just kind of pull content from, the company to, again, going back to creating quality content to create that quality content. I definitely think that's a challenge. But it's something that you can do. And then, so, and I think too, working with the companies to maybe get them to, maybe send you over stuff that they're doing, and, keeping you in the loop with what's going on with their company and with their brand. I think that helps too with, having you posting and creating ongoing content for them. Does that make sense?
Definitely. And I think one of the things that a lot of people miss, actually was just posting about something of this today, is it has to do with the website, when you said the website. So I think the overall message here is that, well, if you don't have content, you're just gonna have to create it, right? Because if we're doing this, if somebody's hiring us, or if your company is hiring you, or if they're putting you in charge of this for your particular brand or product, well, you're gonna have to get creative and figure it out. But a lot of times I see, and I think this is what you're alluding to, is that companies will spend all this time and energy on their website, and they will build it out, and they will spend a lot of money. And that's not a bad thing. You need a good website. By the way, among the other millions of things that John does really well, he builds these amazing websites too. He do everything. But anyway, but a lot of times they will put all this content on their website and all this stuff. I mean, they'll spend like a year and like all this money. And then when it comes to their social media, they're like, well, whatever, we'll have the kid in the office, the intern, do it. But that is a place, if you're not marketing your website by either spending money or getting it up, nobody's going to look at it. If you're not doing SEO, if you're not actively in SEM, if you're not pushing it somewhere, it will just sit there. It won't do anything. I promise you. But typically, a lot of times, companies have a great place to take the content that you put on your website and make it real by putting it on your social media pages, right? And make it something that people will actually look at. I think that's a great place. That's a great place to look. We always start with that when we have clients. The other thing is, having the real content is so important. And I will get, sometimes clients will like send us pictures and stuff, and they might text us a picture from a restaurant or from, a retail store or something. It'll be low quality, be a cell phone picture, not a professional one. And they'll say, oh, I took this picture, but I don't think it's good enough to post. I'm like, yeah, it's totally good enough to post. It looks great. It's real. It's real time stuff.
People want authenticity.
Yeah, you're right. They totally do. And so while, yes, we can send out a videographer, a photographer, so we can send John out to make you freaking movie about your business, but that's great. But you also want the real time stuff. You want that too. When you have availability of high quality content, what we call the rule of varied content, right? We want to post a high quality picture, and then maybe an article, and then maybe a graphic, and then maybe a low quality picture, and then maybe post about something going on in our community, and then maybe a contest question, and then on and on, different kinds of content. That's when you think people will start engaging with you. It's when you post the same thing over and over and over again, right? Without any kind of a strategy. You're just posting to post. It'll never work. But I think that's a really good suggestion, is to a blog, create content, go to your website, get creative. And I think some of the best social media content comes out of when people don't have anything to post, and they have to get creative. They don't have a choice.
Yeah, totally. Got to think about it. So
right on.
Yeah.
Well, great. I think we're good here on time. That went really fast. So we talked about, what platforms to market on, what kind of content to post, and how often to post. We probably could have, maybe we should have. We probably could have spent like a whole podcast just talking about each one of those things.
Totally.
But as we go through, I'm taking everybody through our 5-step process here from the Stop Posting, Start Marketing book that's coming out. And this is great having John here. I think you need to come back and just do this with me, because it's so much easier doing this if I don't have to talk to myself. I'm going to become like Howard Hughes, just sitting in my room all day, talking to myself and getting all crazy. But thanks for being here, man. I appreciate it. Great stuff. Anything else you want to push or plug or talk about or anything at the moment?
I'm good, man.
He's good. All right. Well, hey, thanks again for listening to the Stop Posting, Start Marketing podcast. It's Joe Sanders here. Special guest today, John Meier. Come back next time. We're gonna talk about branding and how to position your business as a brand on the digital marketing channels, and the how important that actually is maybe the most important steps. We're gonna do that, and that's all I got. We'll talk to you next time. And this is Joe saying, stop posting and start marketing.